Hello, and welcome to Unsheathed with your hosts, Kyle Gold and Cam Hirosaki. We hope that you enjoy the program. Please stick around afterwards. There'll be cake and blowjobs.
Hi, welcome to episode number 79 of Unsheathed. I am barely struggling along with my throat, Kyle Gold.
And I am fabulous self-starter Cam Hirosaki.
And I'm...
Joining us is...
Eat squeak, motherfucker.
Welcome, foozzzball. Always glad to hear from you again.
Down to the business!
Yeah, all the straight people have great sound bites on this show.
I was trying to think of what other straight people we've had on the show.
Dick Power.
Dick Power.
He had some great lines.
That one guy, that other guy, that girl that time. Have we had a girl on the show? We've had a girl on the show.
No, we haven't. We will have had one soon.
Ooh.
No, you're thinking panels that we did with girls.
No, that's right.
Yeah, that wasn't recorded.
We had Lovejoy.
Oh! You heard it here first. Lovejoy got the bird from Kyle and not me.
I must admit, I was confused when I first heard him on this podcast. Gotta say.
He doesn't sound anything like Cam Hirosaki makes him sound out to be.
Wow, well, I'm glad that hopefully we'll have had a girl on the episode before we get to 100, because otherwise that would be kind of embarrassing. It plays into all kinds of gay stereotypes.
Yeah.
We had a girl in an audience.
Yes, but I think that was also on a panel and not the podcast.
No, we've had girl when we did.
Oh, but have they asked questions though?
Yeah.
Really? Are you sure?
Yes. They may not have had questions that were asked on the air in the podcast, but they were there. Yeah. Written out, yeah. And drawn.
Oh, that's right. She drew the martial arts wallaby.
Right. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right, we found a girl.
Anyway, well, at least one. I can think of a couple others.
And I did a bad New Zealand accent of a girl back on Unsheathed Presents number 5? 7? 6?
Anyway.
Whatever.
So things that we're doing, I will start off by saying that I'm working on, I would like to attribute my sort of struggling with this cold to a lack of sleep due to staying up till all hours working on the draft of the Collations novel, but the sad truth is that I'm just working on the draft every spare moment, and I'm actually getting a lot of sleep, and I'm just sick. We've been traveling around somewhat, and I'm in kind of the home stretch on it because I want to get it done for next week, and it's so that it can go out to the writing group. And towards the end of this week, I got a little more successful with it than at the beginning because I was really tired at the beginning of this week and just didn't get anything done. But I have that, and then once that's done, I got to finish up a draft of my secret project, and then I have a bunch of other little stuff to do.
Yeah, I'm still working on Summerhill. Haven't really built up a lot of momentum on it lately because I'll work on it for a day, and then life will intervene, and I won't have time to write. Things have been a bit of a jumble, but hopefully that clears up soon. So I'm working on that. Since Kyle's sick, I am drinking his share of the vodka today. And I should actually get back to my secret project, too, because I always forget. One thing I haven't done, I've been reading a lot lately, which I hadn't had a chance to read a lot lately. So I've been catching up on that. So it's not like my time is completely going to waste.
Yes, I have said that when I get done with all of this writing that I have to do, I'm going to take a week and just read, because I now have 2 stacks of books to read. One is the books to read first, and then another is other books to read. And the books to read first is only 9 books, and the other stack is at least 16. I couldn't count it properly last night. So,
well, this would be a lesson, you kids. Don't read.
Never try.
Never try.
Yeah, I'm sort of currently trying to see if I can get some stories published in the mainstream furry stories, going to places like Asimov's and Clark's World and that kind of thing. I haven't had a lot of luck yet, but I'm giving that a shot. And I'm maybe going to be doing a comic with Amon Omega, aka that Alex guy. Maybe. Things are sounding hopeful, but we're still looking into it.
Awesome.
I've come to discover that all furries are named Alex, Brian, Justin, and Andrew. Or that,
Gosh.
that accounts for like 80% of them.
Yeah.
Hmm. So 80% of us are named what? Like Alex, Josh, Brandon.
Brian, Justin, and Andrew.
Yes.
Okay.
And we have one Donovan.
And, there's only one Donovan.
Yes.
So let's see what's coming up on the podcast. We've got a couple of fursuiters going to come on and talk about characters. We've got, hopefully, still trying to work out details for our interview with Catherine Valenti. She has a number of books out that we've recommended if you guys want to read up on her in preparation for that. Palimpsest we've recommended, Habitation of the Blessed. Both of those have, actually, animal people recur throughout most of her books. I'm currently reading The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making, which is a cool story, which we'll talk about more with her, but it was self-published on the internet first, and then it won an Andre Norton Award for children's literature, and so now it's getting a nice print edition. But she has a little girl who turns into a jackal.
Oh, wow.
In it, just briefly, but and Deathless, which KM is currently reading.
Yes, I'm about like a third of the way through Deathless. No animal people so far, although it does have Baba Yaga.
Who is kind of terrifying in her own right.
Oh, yeah. And she's like a communist version of Baba Yaga, so she's Chairman Yaga.
Wow.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Isn't it? And she like rides in the big black car that has chicken feet for wheels. It's pretty awesome.
And it's amazing. Yes, we're very much looking forward to having the chance to talk with her about her work and the crazy twisted paths her mind runs down.
Yeah, even if I weren't going to interview her, I just want to get her for a drink and just talk to her and see how her mind works, because it's fascinating the things that show up on the page.
And then I don't know. After that, we've got lots of cool stuff planned. We're going to be coming up, I guess this is 79, so we're looking to be about 5 months away from our 100th episode.
Well, if we time it right, that could be for our inaugural, live show.
Our inaugural live show?
Our annual live show.
The anniversary of our first live show.
Of our first live show, yes.
Rain 1st might be. It'll be close.
Oh, I was thinking for our San Jose show, which was last fall.
Yeah, could be. I mean, we're looking at kind of end of September, so that would be Rain 1st-ish, but we could also do the San Jose one.
My travel schedule is so messed up this year. I'm going to too many places. And that's still nothing compared to where you go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't have any sympathy for you.
Oh, I also have, nothing in the way of travel funds, so it makes it a little more stressful.
Just hitchhike. That's perfectly safe.
Yeah. Hey, can you take me to Toronto? Can you hitchhike me across national borders?
Anyway, this episode, the cool thing that we're doing is the thing that we haven't done in a little while, which is the editing challenge.
Yeah.
Following the piece that Condrel sent in for us, we got pieces from two more people, and they're both kind of short, so I'm thinking we might be able to cover both of them.
I think we can.
It depends on how deeply we get into the first one. What we will do is we will read the piece. We're also going to post them online when we post the episode. Given my the tenuous nature of my voice at the moment, I would appreciate it if one of you guys would read the first one and the other of you guys would read the second one when we get around to it. So the first piece is called Glass and is by Buck Turner.
All right, I have the wrong one queued up. Let me pull that up real quick. Okay, got it.
I've got it up. I've got it.
Yeah, if you want to read that one.
Yeah. La 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 la.
Kit, we can cut this, right?
What'll it be, sir? Whiskey. Neat. What kind? Well. $4. The exchange, accompanied by a squat glass of amber rotgut, sliding across the bar, was just another reminder that the cougar was not welcome in this bar. The cougar was expressionless as he sipped his fourth whiskey of the evening, the bartender setting his change directly in front of him. An outsider would not recognize the affront, at least not until he had seen it repeated over and over again. 4 times a visit, 5 days a week, this very exchange occurred. It was a message sent by the bartender that in an establishment where a drink could be ordered with a raised eyebrow and an imperceptible nod, that no matter how much whiskey he drank, this cougar would not be a regular. The title Sir was another barb where everyone else was, "Hey you, bub," or "You wolves, son of a bitch." In the 6 months of clockwork neat whiskies, neither fur had asked or offered a name. It was an accident of need and geography that kept the cougar coming back, this bar being the furthest away from work he could stand before stopping. It was also convenient to the package store on the walk back to his apartment. He drained the last sip of his whiskey and slid the glass back towards the back of the bar, along with the change from his final drink. Standing up, he strode to the door, displaying no effect from the 4 drinks, save, perhaps, a slight shift from predatory cat towards inscrutable feline. He left behind his empty glass, on his way to replace it with a full bottle from the package store, en route to his empty apartment. And that was glass.
So the purpose of this, as stated by Buck in his email, is to introduce the character of the cougar. So we're going to be going through it with that in mind, and also with an eye towards the technical aspect and structure of the piece. Mm-hmm. So, Foos, since you did such a lovely job reading it, would you like to kick off? I would say let's start with sort of start with the beginning. Don't go for like overall impressions, but let's start with how he begins it.
Okay. Well, he begins it with loose dialogue, very short, which in some cases could be effective. But the problem here is that his is a little bit indistinct. Because, for example, the brand that he chooses for his whiskey is Well, W-E-L-L. Now, that's not a common brand of whiskey I'm aware of, and it could be some kind of, attempt to respond.
Just to explain, when you're in a bar and you order something Well, it just means to just get, like, whatever the cheap stuff they have is.
Really?
Yes, that is an actual term.
I didn't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
you order Well whenever you don't care what they give you and, like, you don't want to order something by name.
Sounds like in those beer commercials where they say, "Do you want something with more taste or less taste?" And they say, "I don't care." They might just say, "Well." Yeah,
so like if you're gonna get like a screwdriver, then they're like, it's like, do you have a preference on vodka? You can just be like, "Well," just like whatever vodka brand of vodka that they pour into it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I had no idea about that. Is that specifically an American thing?
I don't know if it's just an American thing or not. I know it is an American thing. I have certainly ordered Well drinks in the past.
Okay, well, so maybe if it's a little bit unusual to your readers, you need to, present that in a way that teaches them what it is, as well as, displaying it. But
it is jargon.
Yeah.
It qualifies as jargon, and you can't just drop jargon in without enough context to get it. Because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, so Well is a brand of whiskey?
Yeah, Well is code for bottom shelf.
It's code for the cheap stuff. Okay.
Right.
That would explain why the booze is described as rot gut.
Yeah, although I didn't link rot gut to the type specifically. Rot gut can be any kind of hard liquor.
I don't know. Well whiskey would certainly qualify, I think. Like, the idea of drinking Well whiskey makes my stomach turn, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, so...
It starts out with this dialogue.
Right. And I kind of agree that the what did you call it, loose dialogue?
Loose dialogue comes out across a bit indistinct.
Yeah, and I my comment on this was that it's very common to tell writers to open in medias res, which means in the middle of the action. Mm-hmm. But you should not interpret that to mean opening without giving the reader any context about what's going on. This is kind of the equivalent of starting a movie with a black screen and having the dialogue over it, in which case you can't let it sit for more than 1 or 2 lines. And I think you could get away with...
does it.
I think you could get away with just the first line and then context, but it goes on too long for my taste to be able to... Because the reader needs some context, like where are we, who's speaking.
Yeah, it certainly has the feel of an awkward bar exchange, which I'm sure that part is intentional, but again, like, if you're not the sort of person who knows what ordering a drink well means, and that's pretty much this whole exchange kind of, you don't have enough context to figure out what's going on. I mean, I was okay with it, but I also spend a lot of time drinking, so that might...
Well, and also, I mean, my question would be, why it's a stylistic decision to remove the context from the exchange. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, and that's not immediately apparent.
It can be done if the dialogue itself holds a lot more context. Because I mean, the real difficulty ultimately is that the lines "Will it be, sir? Whiskey neat? What kind? Well, $4." This could be taking place anywhere at any time. This could be 1920s. It could be the year 2000. It could be a classy place. It could be a dreary place.
Is it a hotel bar, an airport bar?
Right?
Exactly. The words
A
themselves
saloon.
don't say much. They're just saying this is an aesthetic of ordering booze, and it's not really providing us with much meat to interpret.
Right. And in this case, the context is important because the location of the bar is important to understand in the dynamics of what's going on.
Yeah, which is
It's
something
a
I'll get
neighborhood
into
bar.
later. Yeah.
And it would almost, I mean, I guess I don't see the point of holding back on the context until you're done with the dialogue.
If the dialogue was more interesting, but yeah.
Right. Well, if the dialogue told you something about the context, but it doesn't.
Yeah. Or if you're doing something like really Tarantino-esque, which if you're not Tarantino, you shouldn't be trying to do.
Right. And even sometimes when you are.
Yeah, okay, I'll give you that too.
Okay. Anything else about the beginning there? I think we've all learned something here today. Or at least me and Foos have.
Yeah. And probably a lot of our listeners.
Yes.
Now we know how to order really crappy booze.
If you want to drink swill, but don't want to tell the bartender, I don't give a shit, now you can just say, well, it makes you sound classy. Despite the fact that you were ordering literally the least classy thing they have.
So
Classy way to get drunk.
what's interesting is now I think that term does tell us something.
Yeah.
Because it's a classy way to say, I don't care. And so it tells us that the cougar doesn't want to sound, or we don't know it's the cougar yet, but the person ordering the alcohol doesn't want to sound like a lowlife or...
Yeah, it also implies that they know their way around bars.
Right.
But without teaching us what that jargon is or means or give us... It's really risky to use that. 'Cause I mean, okay, in a sample population of 3, only one of us got it.
No, I agree with that. But I'm saying that if he were able to communicate what it meant, the fact that he's using that term to order it, as opposed to just saying, if I went up to a bar and someone asked me and I didn't care about what brand, I would say, whatever, don't care. But the fact that he knows to say that and chooses
See, that
to
makes
say
you
that,
sound just like a drunk when you just say whatever. Which reminds me of getting drunk in Japan, when I would literally not even specify a drink. I would just put money on the counter, and they'd be like, what do you want? And I would say, I don't care. And they would make me something and give it to me.
Nice.
Classy.
Thank you for sharing that. So now we know that the cougar is not just trying to get drunk. Or at least we think we know that.
Well, I mean, evidently. I'm surprised he hasn't just said leave the bottle.
Do people really say that?
They do in movies. They do in fiction, and that's what this is.
Right. Have you ever done that in a bar?
No. I'm not sure how a bartender would actually react.
So when are you going to try it?
I can't
only
think of
one way to
any
find
instance
out.
where I would want to just keep drinking from a bottle of straight liquor at a bar. The only things I would like, the only thing I order straight at bars is scotch. And if I'm going to have them leave a whole bottle, that's going to be an assload of money that I can't afford.
So what you need to do is just say, when they come in and pour you the shot, just say, leave the bottle. And when they stare at you, go, just kidding. I just wanted to see what you do.
I'm imagining doing this at Frolic, where like everyone's all like happy and furry and like dancing, and then comes this guy all maudlin, looking to just nurse a bottle of scotch.
Leave the bottle.
What's the problem? Royal wedding.
All right, moving on.
I do question this guy's paragraph construction, because
Yes, that was something I picked up on
Yeah.
also.
These are long paragraphs that sort of meander on point, and I think you could break up both of these into like 2 or 3 smaller paragraphs.
and I think the key factor here is, what exactly is a paragraph? And, the point word that you just used there is, I think, very key, because really, you use a word means something, you just need to use a word. You need more meaning, you use 2 words, a sentence. You need to sort of have one unified meaning coming out of construction, not 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, just kind of summarizing the first narration paragraph there, we start with sort of a summary of, hey, this is what this dialogue you just heard meant. And then the cougar didn't react to it. People wouldn't understand what the dialogue meant unless they'd seen it. And now I'm explaining to you what it means. It was a message sent by the bartender that the cougar would not be a regular. And then also the title was another thing about the cougar not being a regular. So you kind of have the conclusion. I mean, one of the things that I flagged was, first you tell us what the exchange means. The exchange was just another reminder that the cougar is not welcome in this bar. And then you go on to explain how it shows us what it meant. And you come to a conclusion to your paragraph, and then you add another sentence after it saying, oh, and also this. So, I mean, to me, that you should get rid of that first sentence altogether, because all it does is summarize what you go on to draw out in the rest of the paragraph. Either that or get rid of the rest of the paragraph and just say, the exchange was just another reminder that the cougar is not welcome in this bar, and then go on to whatever happens next.
I think if you look at the last couple sentences in there, they're actually probably a good replacement for the paragraph as a whole. And it's the title, "Sir," was another barb in a bar where everyone else was, "Hey, you bub," or "You old son of a bitch." In the 6 months of Clockwork Whiskies, neither fur had asked for or neither offered their name. Those 2 lines themselves tell us the rest of the story quite nicely.
No, that's a good point, actually.
Yeah. And it's and in that it's brief and succinct, but it also has character. Like, you really get the feel of like, okay, yeah, like this like neighborhood bar feel, like, this is how people are supposed to act, or how they do act, except for with this guy.
I do want to point out something from sort of a technical aspect too. In the beginning, a couple sentences there, there's actually 2 technical things that jump out at me that I find myself guilty of and always have to take out of my own drafts. The first is, if you first of all, the exchange was not accompanied by a squat glass of amber rot gut. It would be followed by a squat glass of amber rot gut. It's just sort of word choice there. But the exchange was just another reminder that the cougar was not welcome in the bar. The cougar was expressionless. And then, I mean, I don't think you should slavishly follow the dictum about avoiding the passive voice, but it is interesting how it does, when you use it over and over again, it does water down the prose. And like when you say, the exchange was another reminder that the cougar was not welcome in the bar, what the passive voice does is it removes a protagonist. So the exchange was a reminder is very different from the bartender said these things to remind the cougar that he was not welcome. Then the bartender is the active party. The bartender is doing something.
Yeah, I agree that the was construction definitely waters it down, which is especially unfortunate given what the guy's trying to drink. But
and then really the cougar was expressionless it's a little better, but you can still just say something like, the cougar sipped his fourth whiskey of the evening, expressionless, as the bartender set his change directly in front of him.
Yeah.
The putting the was in there puts too much emphasis on it, when really the action that's going on in that sentence is him sipping, and being expressionless is just kind of the thing that is happening alongside.
From a very personal stylistic issue, I like getting my third-person perspective very close to my characters. So that construction, the cougar was expressionless. That sort of subconsciously tells us that we're external to the character, watching the character.
Right.
And that's something I personally try to avoid, but that's a stylistic concern purely mine.
Well, and also, I mean, I don't have as much a problem with it if it were its own sentence, if it was just something like, the cougar was expressionless. Because then that's the point of the sentence, and it's describing him. It's more, when you're putting it into a sentence where other things are going on, it puts too much weight on it without giving you an active thing to happen in the sentence.
Yeah.
The other thing in that sentence, that second sentence is, the cougar was expressionless as he sipped his fourth whiskey of the evening. The bartender set in his change directly in front of him. And I again, this is something that I'm guilty of a lot, is, how did I phrase it there? Using the gerund to link two actions rather than its proper use, which is an action taking time. So, how long did it take the bartender to set the change in front of the cougar? Because if he sipped his whiskey while the bartender was setting the change down in front of him, that implies that the setting the change was going on the whole time that the cougar was sipping his whiskey. And really, and the reason I recognize this is, again, because I do it all the time. You're doing it because it sounds okay, and it kind of varies the construction of the sentence, and it's a way to link the actions without putting too much work into the sentence. But it's actually, if you break that sentence down and you kind of look at what the words mean, it's not very correct. So you'd want to say something more like, the cougar sipped his whiskey as the bartender set his change down in front of him, or the bartender set the change. And again, set is kind of a weak verb there, because the bartender could toss the change down, could slide the change, slap the change down.
That's really said bookish. What he's doing is he's putting it down.
Right.
Finding an alternative word for that is, you can do it, but, just the word put can be, very direct.
Right. And I don't have a big objection to set, but what you'd want to say is something like, the bartender set the change down as the cougar picked up his glass to sip his whiskey, or something like that.
And flipped him off while he was not looking.
Right. And again, the question is too, if you're not, if the action is not telling you anything about the scene, if the way that the bartender sets the change down is not important, if the fact that he sets it down is not important to the plot, then why is it in there?
And he mentions that, that's another dig, is the fact that he's, putting this change down, but he doesn't explain why.
I don't think that's what's a dig. And that's, which is another problem with the paragraph construction.
Yeah.
Because when the bartender set the change directly in front of him, then says, an outsider would not recognize the affront. But I think what he means by the affront is the dialogue. Okay. Then and not the setting the change down.
Then we have a subject or topic agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
So it,
or topic agreement issue rather.
It does kind of wander. It wanders around topic wise. Mm-hmm. But be careful of the gerund thing, because gerunds are supposed to be for actions that take a period of time during which some other shorter actions happen. So I was running home when I saw the stop sign.
Yeah.
Running home takes a while. Seeing the stop sign is an instant thing. Or the bartender took a long time counting the change while the cougar sipped his whiskey.
Right.
Something like that.
Another thing, and this isn't the issue here, but when you also link things with gerunds, that's where you run into dangling participle issues a lot. Which, again, is not the problem here, but that is something to keep an eye out for.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hacksaw Rat, is this sufficiently hacksawed to pieces?
Oh, God, no. Oh, God, no. If I want to be a bit of a bitch, I can point out that in several segments, he's really doing a lot of over-explanation. He's... for example, like just this one sentence, okay? It was a message sent by the bartender that in an establishment where a drink could be ordered with a raised eyebrow and an imperceptible nod, that no matter how much whiskey he drank, this cougar would not be a regular. Okay? This is an extreme over-explanation of, it was a message sent by the bartender that this cougar would not be a regular. And it's not really providing much aesthetic value. But there's another issue, which is, in his line, the title "Sir" was in the bar where everyone else was "Hey, you bubba, you old son of a bitch." None of the quotations, because he's using double quotation marks, are capitalized, and that somehow doesn't seem right to me.
No, I'm okay with that, but that might be a American.
I'm okay with that too, because "Sir" isn't capitalized either.
Maybe. I think maybe the thing that's confusing me is that I'd usually expect to see single quotations around, stuff like that. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's
we
an
need
American
a copy
thing.
editor.
Possible. Also, the comma should be inside the quotations, and if you're an American, there should be a comma after bub. If you're British, you can get away without. But you have to be consistent. Exactly. Yeah, no, and I agree. I agree with that. It's kind of like this whole paragraph is basically the cougar's not welcome in the bar. The cougar doesn't care. The cougar's not welcome in the bar. This happens over and over again. The bartender was telling the cougar that he's not welcome in the bar. The title "Sir" was another indication that the cougar is not welcome in the bar.
Another example of that is he sipped his fourth whiskey of the evening, followed by that sentence, 4 times a visit, 5 days a week. We're getting told a lot of things twice. Right.
It certainly, it could be compressed. And I think what you want to do with a paragraph like this is say, what does the paragraph want to tell you? Basically, I think the purpose of this paragraph is to explain as succinctly as possible the dialogue, what the dialogue means, basically, that the cougar's an outsider. And you could do this, you could break this up, like you could say, "What'll it be, sir?" And then you could have a line of narration after that said, "Sir, still after 6 months, everyone else in the bar was, 'Hey, you,' or 'son of a bitch,' or 'bub.' And then whiskey, neat," as though the bartender didn't know, and then you could build up the meaning of the dialogue without having to tell the reader, "Hey, by the way, all this stuff you just heard, this is what it means."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there is an aspect of like sort of trying to explore the psychological battlefield here, and that would be a lot more effective with the dialogue in play. So we actually are given the psychological cannon shot of "Sir" with an explanation of why it's why it's a blow to this guy.
Like I want to see like the look on this bartender's face when he's talking to him,
right.
That sort of thing. Like the whole dismissive nostril snort and
I would move the "sir," actually. If I were going to break it up that way, I would move the "sir" down to the $4, because then you say, "What'll it be?" And then you have your reaction to that, which is, same thing it's been every day this week, every day last week, every day for the last 6 months, whiskey neat. And then what kind? And then it says, they had to go through this charade every time. And it says, well, and then $4, sir. And then you get the extra, the "sir" was an extra barb where, because I have to say, I like things like, a drink could be ordered with a raised eyebrow and an imperceptible nod. I like that line. I like the idea of the title "Sir" being actually a barb. I think it's maybe a little bit overexplained, but I like a lot of the concepts that he's trying to get across in the paragraph.
Yeah.
I just think,
'cause, that part paints a pretty good picture,
right?
But that's like the sort of like the core nugget of what's otherwise like kind of an overlong paragraph.
Did you just say the corn nugget?
Core.
Okay.
As in the central theme or idea.
Right. No, corn nugget just sounds like something McDonald's is going to start offering in about 15 years when all the chicken runs out.
Why is there no more vodka?
And people are...
Because I have to throw up now.
And people don't want any more high fructose corn syrup, and we have millions of tons of corn that we have to do something with. See, over in England, they've got corn.
What?
Corn? You don't know
Burning
about
with-
corn?
No.
I know about corn.
Yes.
My family, I have family members who like throw up violently. Corn, for those of you who don't know, is sort of like if you take like normal food and you try to compose it out of like biologically like unstable fungus. You get
What?
corn.
Right.
What?
You know how they have like soy turkey dogs and
Yeah.
tofurkey and stuff? Well, like imagine that, but without the great taste of soy.
Oh my god!
I actually try to. You can get corn here in the U.S. also now.
Is it like QUORN?
It is exactly that.
Because like when I see that, I'm like, is that some sort of hybrid between quinoa and corn? Because that sounds pretty good.
No, I think I keep thinking it's made of corn, but it's actually not.
Oh, it's not.
I don't believe
No.
so.
What is it made out of then?
Well,
Fungus?
what Foos was just saying, it's fungus.
Reconstituted mycoproteins?
Yes.
Oh, that's
Yes.
terrible.
And
I love the way it can just say reconstituted mycoproteins. It's brilliant.
yes.
Listeners, now you know what that means.
And because of the way, fungus lives, all corn are part of the same organism, and it's like 20,000 years old.
oh god, this is like getting into some like Arthur C. Clarke childhood end shit. Like, let's not.
I
That's
think it's more Lovecraftian myself.
it's the,
The
color
corn
out
from
of
beyond
space.
time and space. Beyond the mountains of corn. Never
We
mind.
still have another paragraph.
Yeah,
We have
let's
another
move on to paragraph
Let's
the
go on.
third.
Let's go on to paragraph the whatever.
Okay.
Kick us off, Foos.
I would like to lead off by saying that the first piece, which is it was an accident of need and geography that kept the cougar coming back. That little piece is good, but the thing is, there's a problem with this. There's a comma after the word back, and then we follow with this bar being the furthest away from work he could stand before stopping. This kind of ruins the flow of the things. I mean, it was an accident of need and geography that kept the cougar coming back.
Period.
Yes.
That's got a good flow.
Yeah.
It was an accident of need and geography that kept the cougar coming back. This bar being the furthest away from work he could stand before stopping. It just immediately kills it.
Right, and then being combines the 2 points I was making earlier of being passive voice and an inappropriate gerund. This bar being the furthest away from work he could stand before stopping is just
and that's an awkward construction.
It's awkward and it's all weak, and I kind of get what it means, but if you said something like, I mean, you'd want something more like, every day when he left work, he resolved to go as far as he could, and every day he turned in at the doorway of this bar or something.
Yeah, because if you did just have a period at that midpoint instead of the comma, I mean, that's fine. But like when you have this sort of like wishy-washy ending, it almost by contrast makes the first half of the sentence feel overwrought. And by itself, it wouldn't be.
Right. No, I do like that first sentence also.
Well, it's not a sentence, it's first clause.
Clause, yeah.
But it should be its own sentence. You
should.
said claws. He's a cougar. Sorry.
You're not allowed to say things no more.
Okay. I'm going to go pour myself
Furries
with a
ruin
screwdriver.
everything.
Is it still a
Even
screwdriver
grabber.
with pineapple?
Can't liquor me up. Yeah, it's a pineapple screwdriver.
Okay.
Actually, when I order
Is
that
it a
at a
golden
bar,
pineapple
when I
screwdriver?
order that at a bar, I say, "Can I have a vodka pineapple?" And that's what they give me.
Wow. Do you specify the
Butterfield.
brand?
No. Generally speaking, if you're ordering a cocktail and do not specify, they just make it well. The only time you ever really need to say well is if you're ordering like straight up liquor, or if they outright ask. Because classier places will ask you. Like if you go like, oh, like I'll have a screwdriver, and like nice places will go like, do you have a preference on vodka, sir? And then you would say well if you don't.
Right. And that's less trashy.
Than saying
Than just
like
saying-
the stuff that comes in the big plastic jug.
Yes.
I want
Give me
pop
the
off.
3-liter bottle of Pink Zin.
Oh god, that's that story is horrible.
But anyway, yes. Yeah, so then after that first clause, the paragraph kind of falls apart for a while.
Yeah, the second sentence, proper sentence, not like part of the sentence, it was also convenient to the package store on the walk back to his apartment. I just felt that was really sort of tacked on. It doesn't have much weight. It doesn't really tell us much.
Right.
I mean, okay, it gets across a couple of facts, but the facts currently don't feel like they mean anything.
Right. I would agree. And
I think
it's like you have this kind of strong statement. It was an accident of need and geography that kept the cougar coming back. Ideally, you would then explain a little bit what that was, and then you have this. Oh, and also, it was convenient to this. Instead of
Get
making
the facts in somewhere else,
right? Or instead of making it the fact that perhaps if he didn't feel the need to stop by the package store on the way home, he would have stopped at a different bar.
Yeah.
Include the package store in the accident of need and geography rather than sort of tacking it on at the end.
I think just after that second sentence, we see a very good opportunity for a possible paragraph break, because suddenly we change focus, and we're going to, he drained the last sip of whiskey and slid the glass towards the back of the bar, along with the change from his final drink. And I'd just like to really point out that feels like a big shift in focus already. And that's a good spot to stick in a paragraph break.
Yes, I would agree. I'm also kind of wondering why he's tipping this jerk bartender.
What are they going to do? Treat you not as good? That doesn't seem to be an issue.
So one of the things that I do think is interesting, along with the comment, along with the way he orders well, and the fact that he tips the bartender, it feels to me, and I think that if this was the intention, I think this is well done. It feels to me like he wants to be a regular.
But he's not putting in the effort. Like
he's putting in a couple. Well,
they said like neither of them had asked for or offered a name. It's like if you want to fit in, like try to get to know these people, and he's clearly not trying to get to know these people.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm confused about, and it was like one of the first things I thought is, okay, he's apparently walking home from work, to his apartment.
Good thing.
And this bar is along the way. And it's just like, how is he not a neighborhood regular? If it's like a walk that's short enough that you can, just do this on your way home, like, how does he not fit into this neighborhood bar? And that's not really explained.
Right. And that was something that I think I pointed out too is, we don't ever get to know, and that might be something that's coming later on.
Yeah.
But it would be nice to have a hint of why.
Yeah. There's some things within walking distance of your work and where you live. I mean, that's pretty much like your stomping grounds at that point.
So he kind of must have done something.
Yeah.
Or else he's just standoffish.
Or they're racist.
Maybe
cats.
they're racist against cougars.
Because we don't know what species the bartender is.
If this were one of my stories, he'd be dead in a couple paragraphs.
If this was one of my stories, he would kill himself when he got home. That's not true. The only person who's killed himself in one of my stories is somebody who was a wife beater, basically.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he'd do if this was one of my stories. Probably find out he was a clone.
Clones can't get drunk. No.
His apartment wouldn't be empty, but it would just be full of himself.
Yes.
I made the otter sad.
You're not allowed to say things anymore.
Right. So, yeah.
I think the next sentence is a good example of what not to do, because this one sentence is very overloaded with meaning. It goes, also, he's got
up. The one that starts with standing up.
It's got that problem there, because it's standing up, he strokes. I think it's a bit snarky, but I think one can tell that there's a problem there, because he's standing up and striding at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
In the course of standing up, he strode to the door, which is a neat trick.
You can, you're not making it perfect, but you can improve this, a lot by saying, he stood up, strode to the door, displaying, and, there you go, just change the tense and the voice, and then we have the rest of the sentence.
You can improve that part of it.
Yeah.
But don't worry, folks, the sentence isn't even remotely over yet, because following standing up and striking the door, he goes, displaying no effect from the 4 drinks, save perhaps a slight shift from predatory cat towards inscrutable feline. Now, somehow, I just don't get that these things are linked at all.
And it's only a slight shift between those two things.
He seems pretty darn inscrutable.
Yeah. I can't screw him at all. I mean, I know he drinks shitty whiskey, and that's about it.
But yeah, and we never saw the predatory cat part of it, so it's kind of like, oh, just so you know, he was a little more predatory before, but now he's...
because he seemed just sort of like a miserable bastard and not particularly predatory at all.
Right.
Yeah, it's sort of like saying that, Cam Hirosaki is a teetotal and churchgoer.
Yeah.
But now he's now he's getting pretty wild.
Woo! Yeah, if in the beginning he strides up to the bar, sits down confidently, smacks his open palm on the bar and demands his drink, and the bartender snaps into action and gives it to him, then yeah, I would buy that as predatory cat, not moping at well whiskey.
Right. Then after the fourth drink, he's like, "You still don't know what I want."
It's because you're so inscrutable.
It's because you're a cougar. Nobody here likes cats. Go home.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Channeling my book.
I think another significant thing is that it's so close to something that could work. It really stands out as something that doesn't. Because, with the standing up, with the striding, we have two fairly key points where we can observe the character's gait, how he moves. And somehow, having that would be a good place to sort of have the guy be a bit more predatory, but, slower, more sort of slinky cat because he's drunk rather than stalky cat.
Shakes his ass at the bartender.
Right. Missing out.
This is what you get for not asking me for my number.
I'll be at the package store later.
Oh my god, that's terrible.
Wow, I didn't even realize that until I said it.
Drunk,
even in a literal sense, it's terrible. It's like, I'm just going to hang out buying liquor until you decide you want to have sex with me.
Looks like we're at the package store now.
Just what kind of package do you get at the package store?
Kit's shaking his head.
But we're still not done. There's more to go. He left behind his empty glass, on his way to replace it with a full bottle from the package store, en route to his empty apartment, when we at last discover what the point behind this package store is.
Right. Because
I think that it's a good concept, but I don't think it's executed well.
Right. I agree with that. I'm sort of passingly familiar with the concept of a package store. But
it is a northeasternly term for liquor store.
Yes. Which is kind of where I'm aware of it from. But it's not something that I use in common parlance. Like, where I grew up, it wasn't a package store. It was a state store.
Okay.
Because it only sold liquor through the state. And so,
Actually, this would probably mean something to Foos. Have I ever told you about the where I come from, what our little slang term for a package store is?
Mm-hmm.
We call it the packy. Which one of my friends from the UK heard this and flipped out. He's like, "No, you can't say that." And I'm like, "That's what we call it. It's the packy." And I know that means a very, very, very different thing on the other side of the pond.
My God, you're gonna get yourself stabbed.
He will. No, this other friend would he would cheerfully say any other curse word that you could think, any other inappropriate word, and he was so horrified at this. It was really funny.
Nothing appalled this. He told, this is the guy who told tasteless Jade Goody jokes, and still could not abide me even saying the word packy in a completely unrelated context.
Right.
For those of you wondering, it's a bit of an ethnic slur for someone from Pakistan,
which is particularly sensitive in the UK because there was a lot of racial tension with Pakistani immigrants, and very just interesting context. And right,
I point out, however, that in this case, learning about the term package store, I am clearly not of you guys' cultural background, but I did pick it up. So this is an instance of using the jargon with enough context to teach us what it means.
Yep. Quite. What did you think about the empty, full, empty in the sentence?
I have to admit, I didn't pick that up until he pointed it out.
Neither did
I'm not
I.
sure how I feel about it. Kyle's got a very good eye for these things.
My thought of it is that I like the echoing of empty, and I wrote a note about it. This wasn't the note I wrote that went on forever and ever. So the empty glass has been mentioned a couple times already. So you have the empty glass on his way to replace it with a full bottle from the package store. If you left it there, that would be a nice little bit of echoing. You know, the glass is empty, the bottle is full. And then you kind of add the empty apartment, and the apartment is not empty for the same reason that the glass is empty. I mean, just sort of literally. If you're trying to link them, I think there's better ways to link them. I would almost want to see him saying, going back to his empty apartment from the bar that might as well be empty for all that anyone in there took notice of him. Or
I wouldn't mind a strong link between the guy's drinking problem and his empty apartment. Sort of like an inclination towards, sort of saying, that full bottle is why the apartment was empty.
Right. And actually, I think if you leave out the full bottle, if you just say, he left the empty glass behind him on his way home to his empty apartment, I think that's stronger also. Because then you do have that. It creates that link. It creates a link between the drinking habits and the empty apartment. And sticking the full bottle I think is trying to do a little too much in that sentence.
I would have written it more like his empty apartment waited for him now that his glass was empty too. Something like that, like a very direct one-to-one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Empty like his soul.
Except you would have written like, empty as he never allowed the clip on his AK-47 to get.
When have I written about AK-47s, huh?
Well,
it's always made-up things.
You don't, but I can't call to mind any of your made-up things right now.
It was empty, just like everybody's life is of meaning.
I wish I could do my
He's not
emo kid hair flip emoticon, but I'm actually talking to you now, so I can't.
Yes. Sorry.
Nobody understands me. Hair flip.
I'm so nonconformist. I refuse not to conform with the rest of you. Okay, I'll do it.
So, any sort of... I think we dissected this pretty well, and hopefully...
well, we haven't dissected it as a whole. We've only dissected it in parts.
That's true. And I do have comments on it as a whole also.
Yeah. My overall comments, again, like I mentioned, I'm still left wondering what it is that is making him an outsider at this place that by all accounts he shouldn't be, and that's important. And I think that needs to, we at least need to have a hint of it, because right now we don't. I'm not getting any indication as to why he is getting this treatment. Why going to a place every day and ordering the same thing over and over, for as long as he has gotten him any inroads with, the local crowd. Why is nobody talking to him? Because it's apparently not just the bartender, but nobody else there, considered as an irregular either. Why? That is, my biggest thought after reading this.
Yeah, I feel that it's not just the questions that aren't answered. I think it's the, because the thing is, he's writing it like there's an aesthetic he's trying to reach, which is, this gritty, noirish kind of, booze hall and, misery sort of vibe. But he doesn't quite, his prosody, his word choice, these things don't quite, add up to what he was looking for. And I think that's possibly most apparent in the way that the loose dialogue at the front kind of slams into these two very hefty paragraphs, or these walls of text. It's sort of like he was trying to do one thing, and he sort of went, okay, I'm going to have this light, airy, sort of quick-moving prose, and then he stopped and he changed gears entirely. And I think, there's problems here like that.
Right, and if you're trying for a noir kind of feel, there's a certain aesthetic and a certain style that you use, and that loose dialogue does not really fit into the noir style. Each dialogue, or each line of dialogue in a noir piece tends to have
Yeah,
weight and is accompanied by
some sort of
expression,
comment, yeah.
meaning, context,
Description of even like the person's voice, and
Right.
that sort of thing.
Occasionally interspersed with some personal narrative. Yeah.
Right. My comment is I think this partly succeeds as an introduction to the character. It doesn't really tell us much about him. It tells us that he's an alcoholic, that he lives alone, and that people in the bar don't like him. We get kind of conflicting reports on his personality. Part of it he doesn't seem to care that people don't like him, but then the little things like the ordering well and tipping the bartender kind of indicate that part of him does want people to like him, does want to be accepted as a regular. As KM said, we don't get any indication as to why there's this tension between him and the people in the bar.
He might be forced to leave his droids outside.
Kit, what's the what's the time? Is that a new record for time elapsed in an episode before Star Wars reference? 1 hour? All right.
Damn.
Achievement unlocked.
So all in all, I think I think it does have promise, and I think with some editing with an eye towards keeping a paragraph to be a block of devoted to a point, as KM said, and as Foozzzball pointed out, there's some good places where you can break the paragraphs here. But think about kind of what you want to say with each paragraph and how they flow into each other. And I think that's just sort of paying attention to that could really improve this immensely.
Yeah, I mean, sand around the edges and sort of narrow the focus in, and I think that, as a character introduction, this can work. It just needs that spadoinkle done to it.
Jewish Japanese otter.
Go
ahead.
We're called Japanese.
I think I'd look very heavily towards the aesthetic, because I think that, if we look at the number of facts being handed over here, you could really compress this down to very, very little prose and still get across the same meaning. But what we really want here is the aesthetic, and I'd really work hard towards building that up. I feel it's a very important thing here.
Yeah, I mean, for one thing that I've noticed is there's pretty much no description of the bar itself. We know that the people who go there go by nicknames, and that's about it. Like, is it a smoky bar? Is it dark? Is it dingy? Is it noisy? Is it, do people gather up at the actual bar? Do people sit at tables? Is there a jukebox? Is there some dude in the corner playing a banjo? Like,
and those things are all part of the noir aesthetic too, if that's what you're aiming for. All right. So since we're at an hour, I know we didn't have a lot to say about the second one. Do you want to read it and maybe do like 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, we should probably at least just touch on it as just sort of like a bit of contrast.
Okay. Why don't you introduce this and tell us who it's from and all that?
Okay, so this is from Unsheathed's own Atari, my fellow otter.
Otter pride.
Yes, otter pride, brofist. But this is, his sort of thing to go over for what he is submitted for editing. And we apologize because I realized that both of these have been sitting in our inbox for the better part of a year before we got to them.
Yeah,
but
just about 9 months.
This is sort of a dialogue exchange, and we have at least a few things to say about it. "Listen here, you old ghoul," Hartford said, pushing himself up from the column and poking his finger into Fairbanks's chest. "I know what my people need. I know what this whole empire needs, as a matter of fact. Just you watch. After today, there's no telling what the empire will be capable of." Pushing the ferret's hand away from his chest gingerly, Fairbanks said, "Believe what you want, Hartford. I won't stop you. I've been a councilman longer than you've been alive, though, so I would advise you to listen to my words." The ferret slouched back against the column, folding his arms and tapping his claws along his elbows. "Whatever you say, sir," he said. "Why are you here, though? I've never known you to revel in defeat before, and Emperor Nolan didn't force any of the councilmen to attend the proclamation." He looked warily at the old, smiling rabbit.
And you want to lead off with your comments? Thank you for that lovely reading.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for not doing a New Zealand accent.
I was gonna say, if I hadn't made a Star Wars reference already, I'd be, like...
Yeah, this is begging for it.
The Emperor did not
Fear will
force...
keep the outer systems in line. Fear of this battle station.
The Emperor has dissolved the council.
We aren't intimidated by your sorcerer's ways, Fairbanks. Your sad devotion to your ancient religion. Sorry.
So clearly what our estimation of this is that it should be written in the Star Wars universe. And then it would be much improved.
I don't know if ferrets and rabbits really work in Star Wars.
Oh, sure, but little green puppets and squid people do.
They're called Quarrens, okay? They share the planet with the Mon Calamari.
Are they also made of reconstituted mycoproteins?
But yeah,
So go ahead.
you definitely get, just even from the dialogue that this is a very political exchange, and these are politically savvy people. Even if you didn't say things like about, like empire and, what's the word coronation is it? Proclamation. Like, just from the style of the banter, you kind of get that from it. At least I do.
Mm. I do find that there's a bit of a conflict, because we start off with Hartford being kind of, powerful crusadery, and then we have the response from Fairbanks, which is kind of powerful and crusadery, and then the second Hartford piece, is a bit flat in comparison, I found.
Yeah, he seems to have, just by having his hand pushed away, he sort of, had the wind blown out of his sails.
You pushed my hand away gingerly. Oh. It's just...
Yeah, that's a bit of a whiplash effect. Too fast loses the... I personally lost the thread of the character, when it's too fast to change.
Right.
You're a ferret. You can't be held responsible for government issues. Sorry.
Right.
Go play with a shiny thing.
Yeah,
motherfucker.
It does kind of transition quickly in that third paragraph. Although, again, it's kind of hard to tell from this piece, but maybe he is just bipolar and anything can switch him off.
I mean, like,
I'm going to be the best ferret ever. You should hold on a second, son. Oh, you're right. I can't do anything right.
I mean, I can see a situation where, like, if we knew more about what was going on here before this, where, like, if, Hartford is sort of like, junior senator from Illinois, and then he's like, look, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive, like, you don't have the savvy that I do, and just sort of calling him out on it, and just sort of, kicking his little, like, wooden stool out from under him. I can see where, that would, be something where being, cornered on a matter of seniority would do it, but it sounds like they're alone.
Well, and also I would say, if the second paragraph, if there was something more substantial there, if he was saying, well, you may think you know what the Empire needs, but are you aware of the situation that's happening in, southern Corn Hut right now?
Yeah. Where
the people are rebelling for a surplus of that very same thing that you think everybody needs, and then the ferret's like, well, shit, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, or something like, what, I dealt with almost this exact situation, like when you were still, in diapers.
Right.
And it's like,
or
I know
something
how to do this and you
historical,
don't. Yeah, exactly.
Or saying, or, you think you know everything, but you also think you have Councilman Magellan's support. And the ferret's like, but I do. And he's like, oh, sit down, little ferret, and listen to me.
Gray muzzle superiority.
Bam.
Slap.
I would like to point out, we're sort of picking... How do I put it? We're generating a lot of stuff that isn't there. We're sort of imagining what might be surrounding the thing. But as presented, It doesn't have any of that.
Right.
As presented, it's missing that, and it needs that other stuff.
Yeah.
Even if it's just hinting at it, because the thing is, the stuff, the scene as presented is actually quite closed. It doesn't have an open feel to it. It doesn't actually feel to me like there is, this other province of Corn Hut or whatever, off to the side. It
Land
feels
of the
very
mycoproteins.
It's too bad we don't name our episodes.
This would be Corn Hut Central. Corn Central. Yeah, no, I think what we're saying, I mean, it's definitely seen with a primary event, and the action that happens in this scene is that Fairbanks deflates Hartford, and we see the effect of that, but we do not get a sufficient action, I guess, to account for the effect.
Especially because he implies that either Fairbanks or Fairbanks' side in this whatever's happened has lost. Like they've
lost something, right?
Yeah. Like, did he lose re-election? Did the Democrats obtain supermajority in the Galactic Senate? Like,
I think this is where Nolan got himself declared emperor, and Councilman Jar Jar voted for it. And
Oh god.
I'm just tormenting KM now.
Jar Jar would be a fair.
Kid is telling us that we have about 5 minutes to wrap this up.
Briefly, I'm just curious about this. Do you guys find that the furry habit of using a species name instead of a name as a pronoun sort of thing, like the ferret, as opposed to the guy's name, which, whatever it was, Hartford. Does that bug you guys? Because it drives me crazy.
It doesn't, but we have been in multiple arguments about this with other people. Because it does bother a lot of people.
It bothers some people.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say a lot.
It bothers, yeah. I'm fine with it.
It reminds me a lot of said bookism, that whole sort of thing where, we have a simple word. The simple word is said. Said is practically invisible. Why not just use it,
Well, the problem with that, though, is that said becomes visible if it's used multiple times in a row.
Yeah.
Not as much as other words.
Yes.
I mean, here we've got
said,
and it's pretty invisible.
No, well, right. Not when you have them separated by whole paragraphs of description and narration and whatnot. But I read a story by an actual, published author, well-known author, that had an exchange of dialogue where each thing was like one line, and it went on for about 12 or 13 lines, and every single line was, he said, Joe said, Steve said, he said, Joe said, Steve said, he said. And by like the fourth or fifth one down, I was like, oh my God, find something else to do here.
Somebody exclaim.
Or just like use
tag.
action for dialogue, or drop a tag, or something. But
I think names in general are quite transparent like that. I think you can get away with using names repeatedly.
And I would agree with that to some extent. But I would also say that I don't think it's necessarily a bad practice if not overused. Because, I mean, the point that we've made is, and I've found this out writing a book with mostly humans in it, I struggle for other things to use because you can't use names repeatedly over and over again beyond a certain point. So I find myself saying things like the sorcerer, the black-robed man, which always makes me think of the Iliad and gray-eyed Athena and
the wine
stuff
dark
like
sea.
that.
What's the one they use for Odysseus?
I can't remember, but they have like whole lines devoted to of different adjectival phrases. But it's in a place where there are many different species. Species would be one thing that you would use to differentiate people.
Yeah, and I think that the reason people say is like, oh well, like we don't write like this normally. It's like, well, no, but it's sort of the default that you are writing about the civilization that we are a part of, and our civilization is at least homogenous. And I mean, like if you're reading like period fiction, that's set in like the American West or something, and like there's like one character who's like the Chinaman. Like I'm certain in the prose, like they won't just call it his name. Like he'll be referred to as the Chinaman. Like,
well, and I was just going to say, if you had kind of an adventurers club in Africa in the 1800s, and you had an Englishman and a Dutchman and a German and a American,
I haven't heard this joke.
The Dutchman says, but you would. And Joseph Conrad does that all the time. The Dutchman said this, and I'm using it in my book because one of my characters is of Irish descent, so occasionally I call him the Irishman.
But now, see, this draws an especial focus to the nationality. And I think that, when you're doing that deliberately, it's quite good. But I mean, here, we don't seem to have much of a reason to, worry that one of them is a ferret and one's a rabbit, even though ferrets eat rabbits.
True.
Lol vor.
Yeah, and I do think it is a little bit cheap, but it is also a reminder that we're in a furry world. I would rather have the reminders come in better ways, but I don't think it's bad to have the placeholders like that.
I would rather that than saying like so and so grinned with his lupine muzzle every other line, because then that's
masked. Because honestly, we don't have a big vocabulary built up of things that tell us this character is a fox, other than to say he was vulpine. He had his long red tail. Yeah, I mean, if we lived in that world, then we would have all kinds of little subtle cues where we would say, "Oh, foxes always, do this," and so when you describe someone as doing that, it's a fox.
Mm-hmm.
Swishier than a French maid and easier than the TV Guide crossword.
All right, Kit has had enough.
I think so is Kyle.
I win.
Very briefly, I will say that a very helpful thing I find when reading through these things and looking for problems is to pretend that I'm a complete idiot and that I don't understand anything unless it's being said very clearly. Mm-hmm. And I find that that's very useful.
Go to 4chan to learn that skill, by the way. Because you'll certainly be like, I don't understand anything. Why is this thing a thing?
I mean, by admitting that you can be wrong about something, you naturally sort of go, I don't want to be wrong. I want this text that I'm reading to make me feel like I've got it right.
Right.
I think that's a thing to aim for.
And I would say, real brief, I'm sort of summarizing things we talked about a little bit beforehand. First paragraph of this, the dialogue, a little bit overdone.
Yeah, turning it a bit gives it more punch.
I know what this whole empire needs. As a matter of fact, is a little too much. The whole after today, there's no telling what the empire will be capable of is a little too much. But again, we don't have the surrounding context.
Yeah,
and I think also
actually that line could be changed to give context of why.
True.
Why things
with this blah. By mobilizing these troops, the empire can do whatever.
Yeah, because when he says he's like, I know what people need. I know what this whole empire needs. And then
Porn.
Now that such and such, we're going to show you up. And then
right.
Fairbanks can just sort of smack his paw away and be like, sit down and shut up for 2 seconds so I can tell.
Well, then that gives him
I'm going to learn you about how it is.
And that gives him something more concrete to play off of. Too,
yeah,
where he says, "Oh yeah, you remember when we had Quarren back 30 years ago, and everyone died." Anyway, last one too. The whole "I've never known you to revel in defeat before," and Emperor Nolan didn't force any of the councilmen to attend the proclamation. Smacks me a little bit too much of, "Hey reader, I'm explaining to you why it's unusual for this person to be here."
We're meeting now for the first time.
Yes, as you remember.
Yes, as you know, back on our planet, Marva.
Anyway.
But I'm not talking about things we both already know.
But just something like, "Why are you here, though? Come to revel in your defeat," or something like that.
Yeah.
But
speaking of which, for people who haven't seen it, The Lost Skeleton of Cadavra is like the movie to watch if you want to know how to not do dialogue.
Oh yeah,
because they literally do that.
Yes, but they do it on purpose, so it's
awesome.
So
but you can see how awkward it sounds.
Yes.
I think it's actually standardized as the "as you know, Bob" infodump.
Yes.
As we both know. I've actually seen that, as we both know, and it's just like, why are you saying it?
Yeah, no. All right, we're going to wrap this up. If you guys have hopefully it's a little bit longer than the pieces that we got here, like maybe a 500-ish word piece that you would like us to consider for an editing challenge episode in another 9 months, please send it in to Unsheathed Podcast.
Possibly sooner, we don't know.
Unsheathedpodcast@gmail.com. Follow us as Unsheathed on Fur Affinity. Do not bother sending us private notes on that account because we really don't check them all that often.
Yeah.
But you can send me a private note as Kyle on Furfinity, or you can follow me on Twitter and LiveJournal as Kyle Gold. And LiveJournal is where I keep most of my updates, but I post to Twitter when I post a LiveJournal article. So.
And I am Cam Hirosaki on all three of those. Probably the quickest way to get in touch with me is to either hit me up on Twitter or just send me an email.
Yeah, I generally prefer email for correspondence. I've had people ask me like questions on Twitter like, how do you continue to be inspired when you're under a deadline?
Oh, yeah, like, okay.
That's not a 140-character answer. But
and I'm not going to spam tweet my feed responding to you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find foozzzball at sinismycoprotein.com.
Yeah, you can email me at foozzzball@sinisbeautiful.com, foozball with 3 Zs, or you can stalk these 2 other guys and follow them when they're talking to me, and you'll find me like that.
He's also foozball on Furfinity.
Yeah, and Twitter.
And he posts
sometimes
military clone corn.
Do you like thylacines? Yes. Do you know what a thylacine is? Do you want to know what a thylacine is?
And how far they can unhinge their jaws.
Which amazes me that, like, why is there not some big connection between thylacines and vor? If there is one, I'm not aware of it. I'll send my Lovecraftian tendrils into the Underdark and see what my people tell me.
Thank you, Foos, for joining us.
It's cool. I know a guy.
Hope to have you back on again soon, whether for editing or not. And thank you all for listening. Good night, and keep writing.